friend didn't came and his wife didn't come. His wife, she didn't come.
Oh, yeah. My fiance.
Okay, let's begin. अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोर् श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायिने कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतुषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्थेषु भिघ्नस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। स्वस्ति अस्तु विश्वस्य खलः प्रसीदतां ध्यायन्तु भूतान् शिवं मिथो धिया मनश्च भद्रं भजतादधोक्षजय आवेश्यतां नो मतिरप्यहेतुकी। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, beginning from verse number 5. These are prayers of Hanuman to Lord Ramchandra. So in the previous prayers, he was referring to the good character of Lord Ram, and then he spoke about his Swarupa in the previous verse. So in this verse he talks about his activities. Says Martya avtarastu ya Martya shikshanam raksho vadhayeva na kevalam vibho tatonyatha shadaram tasvatmanam sita kritani vasinani ishvarasya. So he says that the Lord, he comes in the material world only for one purpose, and especially this is true for Lord Ramchandra, and that is to give education to humanity. Martya avtarastu ya Martya shikshanam. So we are all mortal beings, and he descends among us to give us education. although it is described in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he comes to protect the saintly and annihilate the unrighteous people. Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya cha duskritam. But protection is not just protecting one's physical body, but real protection is by knowledge. Because if one does not have knowledge, then there is no meaning to protecting that person. And just like you protect, now there is a lot of movement to protect whales, protect tigers, or protect some other species which are on the verge of becoming extinct. So he is not giving this type of protection. Because whether tigers exist or they don't exist, how does it affect our knowledge? So real thing which is to be saved is education. Because without education, human beings are worse than animals. Not only animals are still well behaved, then they become worse than animals. So ahar nidra bhaimathunam samanam etat pashubhir naranam jnanam tesham adhiko vishesho jnanena hina pasubhi samam. Eating, sleeping, and little bit of sex, and fighting to protect yourself. So these animals also do, human beings also do. So what is so great about human beings? So the greatness is that human beings can have education and animals cannot. Animals, they continue to do the same thing which they were doing 5 centuries ago. But human beings have changed so many things. They are not living the same way as they lived 5 centuries ago, but even after 5 centuries have passed, animals will continue to do the same thing. So the real distinction between human beings is not that they can walk straight on their legs, but they can have knowledge. And that knowledge means how you can live peacefully, not knowledge how to kill others, or how to terrorize others, how to exploit others. So that is the real human being. Otherwise it says jnanena hina pasubhi samana. If one does not have this knowledge, then he is equal to a pashu or animal. So Lord is the one who gives education. Although we have many educational institutes, but they are not teaching how to live. They only teach how to fight. So that education only Lord Ramchandra comes to give, or Avatar comes to give, how to live with love. So he says, Martya avatarastu hi martya shikshanam na raksho vadhaya eva vibhu. So he is not coming here to kill the demons, raksho vadhaya eva na kevalam vibhu, because that killing can be done from anywhere. You don't have to personally go to kill somebody. Make arrangements. So God can also do that. He can remove the unwanted people. But that is not his real purpose. What is the point in just killing? So he says that Kutonyatha syad ramtaha swatmana sita kritani yashnani swarasya. Otherwise, how is that he who is called Ram, means who is happy? Ramyatiti Rama, Ramtiti Rama, who gives pleasure to others, who is happy himself, is called Ram. So why he has to suffer because of Sita? So this is only to give education to others. So, Kutaha Vyasnani, Sita Kritani Vyasnani Ishvara. So he is Ishvara. So how can he suffer like this? Who can actually steal away his wife? How is this possible? Somebody can kidnap God's wife. So he comments here. Nanu tarhi prapanchaloke kathamev prakati bhavati. In the previous verse it was said that Lord is avyakta, he is unmanifest, he is transcendental, he is not material. So if that is the case, then how is that he appears in the material world? No, it is neither recording nor broadcasting. Okay, now it started both. So that is the question which is being raised, that why he comes in this material world. Martya avatara martya akarasya prapanchaloke prakatyam na kevalam rakshaso ravanasya vadhaya. So to take a human form, he says he did not do this only to kill Rakshasas like Ravana. That is not the purpose. Ravana could have died in many other ways. Kintu Martya Shikshnam, but only for educating. Martya Shikshnarthe api ityartha. Martya Dvividha. It says that human beings are of two types. Dharmavanto bhaktimantasya. There are those who are pious, follow rules, regulations, and then bhaktimantas, and those who are devoted to God. Tebhya kramena swasya dharmikatve prema vashyatvayo pradarshneya. So he showed to these two types of people what is dharma and what is love. So dharma shikshnartham, prem shikshnartham, chaityartha. So Lord comes to teach dharma or discipline, and also he comes to teach us love. So these are the two purposes. Anyatha sve swarupa eva ramamanasya paramatmanah Sita vraha kritani vyasnani dukkhani kutasyat. Otherwise, Lord, who is blissful in his own nature, in his own swarupa, how can he suffer from the separation caused by Sita's kidnapping? Kintu sadhvi swabharya धार्मिक ही सर्वथा एव नोपेक्षितव्या तदर्थं प्राप्तानि दुःखानि अपि सहेरनेव इति शिक्षणार्थं स्वस्मिन् असन्ति अपि दुःखानि दर्शितानि. But he wanted to show that a person should always protect his well-behaved wife and should not neglect. So it is the duty of the husband to take care of the wife. Of course, now wives may not want that. It is different, but at least at that time, this was the custom that husband supports the wife and protects, and it is his duty. That's why in Sanskrit marriage is called vivaha. This comes from the root vaha, which means to carry. Like a vehicle, this English word vehicle also comes from the same root vaha. That's why we have the word vehicle. So vaha vahan In Hindi it is called Mahana, the carrier. So Vivaha means you have to carry. So in India when man or boy gets married, then their clothes are tied together. So husband has to carry the wife. So that was the custom in the past. So he says that this is to show, because he neglected his wife. His wife saw this deer in the forest and she said, I want this deer, because this deer was very special, it was golden. And nobody has seen a golden deer, but he also lost his viveka and ran after the deer. And then Ravana came, because this was a trick, what you call decoy, to take Lord Rama away from there. And when he went away, then Ravana came and kidnapped the wife. So this is to teach that if one does that, which means if one neglects the wife, then he has to suffer. And after that he was crying and crying and crying, going from one tree to another tree, asking, where is my wife, where is my wife? So this is to teach that one should not neglect. And second, that one should tolerate if any problem comes from the wife. One should be tolerant. So to show this, he performed this pastime. Otherwise he says, where is the question of suffering for him? So this is the first teaching. This is the teaching to the general mass of people. And the second, Dutiye tu Sita virha kritani vishadadani kuto dukkhani kintu premnah sthai bhavasya vipralambha nara saswadana janitani vipralambhana rasaswadana janitani dukkhatvena bhasmani param sukhani eva nara dukkhani. And the other side of this pastime is that when he was crying in separation from Sita, then he was not suffering, but he was relishing the separation. Because there are two ways to enjoy a loving relationship. One is to be with the lover, and other is not to be with the lover. These are the two ways to enjoy. Like you eat sweet, but if you go on eating sweet, then you lose taste in it. Then you eat something salty or pungent, that also gives a good taste. Then you eat sweet again, and then again some salty. So just like you have different tastes, you don't eat just one. So like that, when there is a love between two people, then you enjoy being together, and also when you are not together, then you also enjoy being separate. Not that when you are separate, then you go along with somebody else, but then you are thinking about that person very deeply in love, and that is also pleasure. So when he was feeling separation from Sita and crying, externally it appeared that he was suffering, but internally he was enjoying this complete meditation on his wife. Because when person is with you, you don't think of that person so much, but when you are away from a person whom you love, then you constantly think of that person. So just like if you have something with you, then you don't think so much about it. You have teeth in your mouth, you don't think of teeth. But one teeth drops down, then you're always thinking of that tooth. Right? so much meditation on the truth comes when the truth falls down. But when truth was in its own place, he never bothered about it. So like that, when people love each other, they are together, when they may not consider so much, but if one of them goes away, then there is intense meditation. So this is what he was showing, because he said there are two things he is teaching. One, he is teaching dharma, husband has to take care of the wife and not to neglect. Another is how to enjoy love and relationship. Because people do not know how to relish love. आत्मारामत्व दुखित्वयोर युगपद एकत्र विरोधात. Because one who is Atmaram, one who is always in bliss, he cannot be miserable. It's not possible. It's like if you are inside the ocean, you cannot be dry. If you are swimming in the ocean, you are wet. You will be always wet. So one who is drowned in the ocean of bliss, there is no scope for suffering to approach that person. Cannot touch. Suffering cannot touch such a person. But that does not mean that they are just uniform happiness. So there are two types of happiness. One is called uniform happiness, that is in the yogis. Another type of happiness in which we have waves, that is in the devotees. So this is what he is teaching. न च सीतायां रममाणस्य कुतः आत्मरामत्वम् इति वाच्यम्. Now one can raise an objection that how can you say that Lord Ramachandra is Atmaram? Atmaram means who is self-satisfied. So Atmarama is one that is just happy with himself, he doesn't need anything. So he says, how can Lord Rama be called Atmaram? Because he was feeling happy with Sita, his wife. And when Sita was not there, he was crying. So what kind of Atmarama is he? So he says, he is still Atmarama because Sita is his Swarupa Shakti. Although Sita looks different from Lord Rama, but it is a manifestation of his own internal potency. So they are not two different tattvas. It is only one tattva, one reality, which becomes manifest in two. So then there is no original sin. Because it's only one. It's not two. Just like if you see dal, you have seen dal? So if you take a grain of dal, it actually has two parts in it. If you remove the covering, inside there are two parts. So it is one grain, but inside there are two identical parts which make one grain. So that's why they say better half. Right? Wife is called better half, isn't it? That means it is half is man and half is woman. And that makes one unit. Like if you have seen the painting of Ardhanarishwara, one form of Lord Shiva, he is half male, half female. Have you seen that? So now you also see Lord Shiva with Parvati. So then it looks like that this is Shiva and this is Parvati, but actually Shiva and Parvati are one, like the grain of dal. They are not two separate things. So if Shiva is relishing Parvati's association and vice versa, that does not make him an Atmarama, or that does not contradict his status of being an Atmaram, means self-satisfied. Because this Parvati is a manifestation of his own self, not something else. So that is the meaning of Swarup Sakti. So in India, whenever you see some form of God, then they always have a female with him, right? Lord Rama is with Sita, Lord Shiva is with Parvati, Krishna is with Radha. So what does it signify? People think that these are their wives. It's wife you can say, but it's really not wife. It is just a manifestation of their energy. And energy is given a female form. And energetic is given a male form. Otherwise God is neither male nor female. But for the sake of pastime, is one male form, one female form, and then they perform their activities. And this is how they give education to us. But in reality, they are one. So they are one but eternally separated in two. So therefore when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also two in one. He is Radha and Krishna combined in one form. So Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. So Sri Krishna Chaitanya is no other than but Radha and Krishna in one. So externally his bodily color is of Radha, but he is Krishna. It's like if you paint Krishna in golden color. He is blue blackish in color, but you paint him. That is Mahaprabhu. So he is having the bhav of Radha and he is Krishna. So he is one, but he is also two. So that's why Jiva Goswami gave the philosophy of one and two simultaneously. Achintya bheda bheda, different and non-different, simultaneously. So this is the important philosophical point.
Can we do that as well, or is that reserved for? Can we have that experience of the oneness and the separation as well? Or is that reserved for God?
No, you can have that with God. You are supposed to have that relationship with God, to feel one and to feel. Because that is the relationship in love. When there is pure love, then that is how you feel. You feel one and also separate. Oneness in love, and separate also because of love you want to do service. Because love means that you want to do service. It gives you pleasure to serve the person you love. Usually we are only thinking somebody should serve me. So that is not love. Love means you just want to do some service. So because of that love there is separation, and also when there is intense love then there is a feeling of oneness. So real feeling of oneness comes only by love. Otherwise you cannot become one with anybody. You have your separate, independent sense of I, and this cannot be changed. It's eternal. No one can demolish this. But when you are very much in love with somebody, then your I and that person's I look like as if they have become one. So that is the ultimate position of love, and that is what you see between Radha and Krishna, or Sita and Ram, or Shiva and Parvati. That's what it is. So there is no physical sex involved there, but it's one's own self. It's just a play. So he says that, now he explains this. So he said that Sita is the Swarup Shakti, or his internal power manifest as a form. So he asks a question on this. Nanu Sitayaha Swarup Bhutatve Katham Tad Virha Sambhavat. He says if Sita is the Swarupa, Swarupa means one's very nature. It is called Swarupa, your very inner existence, which cannot be separated from you. Just like sugar has sweetness in it. So sweetness is the very nature of sugar. You cannot separate sweetness from sugar. It's not possible to separate sweetness from sugar. If you do that, you will demolish sugar. It won't be sugar anymore. So like that, Sita is the very Swarupa of Lord Rama. That's why I'm saying that it is actually one. But just like you have sugar and you have sweetness of the sugar, so you also feel that there are two things. There is sugar, and sugar has sweetness in it. So because it has it, it's also not exactly the sugar, it's something different. And yet it is not completely different because you can never separate them. So in case of God, you can separate it, and yet it is part of Him only. So therefore he is raising a question that on one side you are saying that Sita is the Swarupa of Lord Rama, Swarup Shakti, means it is part of his own very nature. And then you are saying that he feels separation from. He says, how is that possible? How can he feel separation? So you have some abilities. Suppose you are a poet. You have the ability to write poem. You cannot separate this ability from yourself. It is your ability, and in a way you are different because you have the ability and ability is possessed by you. But you cannot separate these two things. So if Sita is like that with Lord Rama, then how is that Sita is outside and somebody kidnaps? No one can kidnap your poetic ability. It's not possible. So in case of God it is possible. That He has His power, His potency, and He can give it a form. And that form can behave like a person, living being, having its own ego, and yet they are one. So that's why it is called Achintya, or translogic. It defies ordinary logic. So based on ordinary logic, the question is being raised that if Sita is the very Swarupa, the very internal nature of Lord Rama, then how is it that she was kidnapped and Lord Rama was feeling separation from her? Because theoretically or logically it's not possible. So this is a very logical question which comes.
But this is different for the Tatastha Shakti. So this is only relates to the Swarupa Shakti.
It's also Tatastha because ultimately they are all Shaktis of the Lord. So he says, Uchyate, he says, okay, I will answer this. And then he gives this answer, which is interesting. Ekameva paramatatvam chit shakti vritti bhedena mahasarena premakhena anaditaiva dvidha vibhaktam tishtati. So he says that the absolute reality is only one. Ekameva. They are not two. But because of the very essence of the Lord, internal potency, which is called prema, love, this one absolute reality exists in two forms. Because love signifies two. There is no question of love in one. If you are only one person in this universe, what is the meaning of love? Love means that there is a person who loves and there is a person who is loved by that person.
I think it can be one.
Hmm?
I say it could be one.
You could be one?
Yes,
No, you can be one, but you cannot have love if you are only one.
I don't agree.
How?
You
Whom
can
will you
love
love?
yourself, I think.
You love yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been learning to. It's
Why
hard.
not?
So
Takes a
what-
life. Can be a hard thing for many people.
So what does it mean loving yourself?
Means you can really have this bliss. That's in Chinese Taoism, and they do practice that yin and yang within oneself, and you reach that.
Okay,
it's-
let me first let me ask you, what does love mean?
Love is that great care and concern and affection and the investment of the heart.
For what? Care for what?
Can be for whomever or for whatever we feel it.
So
It can be the purest love would be the one love of source.
well, that's what I'm saying. That first it has to be understood what love means. Just like when you have anger, right? You become angry sometime, right?
Yes.
So you are angry at somebody. It's not that you are just angry without nobody being the object of anger.
You can be angry at yourself.
Angry at yourself.
Right.
So who is angry at whom?
You
This is what
blame
you're-
yourself, like whatever.
I can't believe I said that. Or something like that. Over
Right,
a time
yeah,
when
exactly.
I was angry.
How
at-
come I'm so stupid? Things like that, right?
Right. I can't believe I didn't study harder for that exam.
Mm.
Or
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You first try to understand what an emotion or anger or love means. When you say you are angry at yourself, you are not angry at yourself. It has no meaning in being angry. You are just frustrated with something you did and now you are repenting on that. That's not anger. Something did not happen the way you wanted it. Anger means you are upset with somebody and you want to demolish that person. You want to harm. That's what anger means. Anger always means that you want to harm, demolish, destroy, do something
Yeah.
negative to a person.
One
That's,
can harm oneself by, doing whatever.
yeah, but
what?
I think you don't understand. When there is an agent, and when an agent is doing something, anger or anything, then there is an object, subject and object.
Babaji, you can ask a question?
Hmm.
So if someone's like people who have,
Because if you could love yourself, then there was no need for you to love others. You could just be satisfied loving yourself. Because all we are looking for is love. Because that is the only thing which gives us satisfaction. Then you don't need any. That will be the best way to satisfy yourself. You love yourself. But we don't feel satisfied like that. We always have this emotion to
I
relate
bel-
with somebody.
You can
I would
first satisfy with yourself, then
Right.
extend.
I would say that's perhaps, in my opinion, a precursor to loving, and I would say that some sort of, in my mind, love and acceptance of self is necessary, but probably not sufficient for contentedness.
You think about the emotion of love and emotion of anger, emotion of hatred. What do they signify? I've heard this statement many times. I love myself. You should love yourself. These are here simply. The word simply means that you should think of yourself as worthy person, not think. It doesn't mean love. Love is also used in the sense of liking. Like people say, I love chocolate. It doesn't mean you love chocolate. It simply means you like it. That's all. So you're using a word in the sense of something else. And that's why I want to distinguish it. That when I'm using the word love, I'm not using in the sense of liking. I love myself means I like myself, that's all. I'm not using the word love in that sense. I'm using the love where it means that there is a subject of love and there is an object of love. And there is a flow of energy of love from subject to the object.
I think at this point, this is becoming circular, so it may make sense to continue.
What is becoming circular?
We're repeating ourselves. The conversation has gone in a circle.
Like what? I'm just defining what is love. Where is the circle?
Right.
I'm defining that when I'm using the word love, this is what I mean. You may have some other meaning of this word, but I'm using it in a specific sense. That's why I'm defining it.
You're making a statement that the subject and object are of different entities.
Yeah.
Which is not true. One can separate oneself. When I observe myself, that basically is subject observing the object.
Yeah, so you
So
observe.
therefore, object and subject are within oneself.
No, they are not within oneself because the object is not you. That's why you can observe that.
Let's go to the next line.
Well,
Yeah, we can go to the next line, but I'm saying when you observe yourself, you don't understand. You have to think these things more deeply. People don't think very deeply. They just take it at the face value, and people in yoga community especially, they talk like that. When you observe yourself, what you are doing is you are observing your mind, and you are not your mind. You simply observe your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, and you are not that. You are separate from that. This is what even Patanjali Yoga Sutra says, that tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. That yoga means chitta vritti nirodha, and chitta vrittis are separate from you. And then he says when they are stopped, then the drashta, the seer, becomes situated in itself. Now you are not situated in yourself because you are being carried away by your vrittis. You are observing your vritti, and not only you are observing your vritti, you are identifying with them and thinking this is me. Therefore when something happens and your vritti is a pleasurable vritti, then you think that you are pleasurable. When your vritti is miserable, then you think you are miserable, but actually you are neither pleasurable nor miserable because you as a Purusha are separate from that. So this is, even in the Yoga Sutra it is explained very clearly, Atma is not any one of these things. So drashta and drishya, seer and seen are always different. This is a basic yoga philosophy or basic philosophy in Bhagavad Gita, and this is a basic Vedic paradigm. If you read any of Vedic philosophy, whether you read Nyaya, you read Vasasika or Purnimasa, this will be taught there. So subject is the pure I consciousness, and then there is a material I consciousness which comes from the Mahatattva. There is Prakriti, which is the primordial matter, and this primordial matter undergoes transformations because of the contact by the conscious energy of Atma or the Self, and it manifests into Mahat, which is the cosmic intelligence which makes our Chitta, and then it manifests as material ego, which is called Ahankara. This Ahankara is not our Ahankara, this is a material element. In our Ahankara we have our own ego, which is the real I. And then this real I of the Atma identifies with the I, which is the material thing, and then you start thinking, I'm this body, or I'm mind. But I'm none of these things. So when it is said that you have to stop your chitta vrittis, means you make this discrimination between these two. So when people are saying that you observe, I observe myself, or I observe this, you are actually making the distinction between these two things. Mostly we are going along with our mind or our feelings, and we identify with it. So yoga or meditation or any of, whether it is Buddhism, they teach how to observe it. So we are not observing ourselves because we are none of these things. We are separate from that. And the problem comes only because we do not know this and we identify with these things. So all the emotions, feelings, everything is actually happening outside you, not within you. No one really suffers or enjoys because suffering and enjoyment cannot contact the real I, because that is beyond the guna. That's what we read in yesterday's verse. Dasa guna vyavastham svatejasa. So that's why Patanjali gives the definition of yoga as chittavritti nirodha. Because as long as you are identifying with the chittavritti, you will continue to suffer or enjoy materially, which is also another type of suffering. Even according to Patanjali or any Bhagavad Gita, this so-called enjoyment is also suffering because it conditions you. It creates a samskara and then you become limited by that samskara, you fall under its sway and then it gives you desires. So both material suffering or material enjoyment, they are considered as suffering as far as spiritual pleasure or spiritual bliss is concerned. So Patanjali has given one solution, that is how to segregate yourself from all the chittavrittis. And when you do that, then what happens to you? So tada drashtu swarupa avasthanam. Then you become situated in your own swarupa. You have your own I. That is the real subject. And everything is an object. So the basic point to be understood that there are only two realities, the spiritual I and the matter. And matter is that which manifests at different levels. Whether it is your mind, your intelligence, your ego, or your chitta, this is all manifestation of matter. And it is all drishya. It is all object and it is all seen. And you are the seer. So when people are saying, I love myself, I love this, then they are making these two distinctions of subject and object within one, but they are not one. So when I am saying love or when the word prema is used here, it is used in a different sense. It is used in the sense that there is a spiritual energy. Because we are not talking about this so-called material attachment, for which also people use love. You see, I didn't want to go into all these details because the way here things are said, many things have been defined. We are in the 5th book, so we already spoken many of these things.
It's helpful though. It's helpful to hear.
But because all the time new people come in the class, and we have to repeat things. So when I am speaking, I am also assuming that because many students are also listening it from the beginning, so I don't have to say it again for them. So here there are 3 types of energies. There is a material energy, the inert matter. There is the internal potency of God, which is love. And in between we are the living entities, which is neither internal nor inert matter. It is in between. So in the conditioned state, this intermediate energy called self, it identifies with the matter, and that is called conditioning, that is the baddha, that is the bondage. And liberation means to become free from that bondage. So when we speak of love, we are not talking about this so-called, when people are falling in love here in the material world. We are not using the word love in that sense. Or when we say I love chocolate or I love myself. That is all material energy. It's all in the conditioned state where the person does not even know myself, who am I. There is a question of loving. It's something which your mind likes, which appeals to your mind, then you call that love. But that's what I am saying, that it is not in that sense that I am using that word. I am using the word in a very technical sense. So when I said that it is not possible to love yourself, I am using my definition of love. And when you say that how can you say that I love yourself? Then you are using your definition of love, which I know also that what is your definition.
Right.
But I am not using that. Because I am talking about this internal energy, which is actually the goal of life, which is not known to people. They have no idea about it. So this material love which we have, you have it love today and tomorrow it's not there. This love, once you have it, you cannot give it up. And it is only unidirectional and it always increases. There is no end to it. That's why I said that in this love it is like an ocean and there are waves in it, which is the beauty of the ocean. The material love is not an ocean. It's people have love and they are saying, I cannot live without you. Then after a few months, we will say, I cannot live with you. Same thing. So I'm not talking about that love. That is, you can say that is a material love. I'm not speaking about that, or he is not speaking that, because actually I'm just translating what he is saying. So there is another type of love which we can, let's say that there are two types of love, material love and spiritual love. So what he is talking about is the spiritual love. And that spiritual love is always between two living people. It has a subject and it has an object. The subject is one who has the love. It is a type of energy. He or she has it, and object is the person towards whom this love flows continuously. Like the river is flowing continuously day and night, going towards the ocean. Like that, the person's thought non-stop flows to that. No one can stop it. Naturally. So it is also experienced at the material level by people for some time. When you are infatuated by somebody, especially young people, then their mind becomes possessed by the other person, continuously thinking about that. But then after some time it goes down because the hormones change. So that is the play of hormones. I am not talking about that. This is a separate type of energy which comes by the grace, by the spiritual sadhana, ultimately by the grace of devotees and Krishna. So that is what he is speaking about it, and that's what he wants us to understand basically. That's why I said that there are two things Lord comes to teach. Because if it was known to us, then there was no need for him to come and waste his time. If this thing was known to us, that even I love myself or I love this, then why God has to come and... So God comes to teach something which is not known to anybody. Because something which is known to us or which we can know by our own experience, then he doesn't have to come for that. So this love is neither known by anybody here, nor they can know it by their own endeavor. So it is for that purpose that he descends. That is the meaning of the word avatar, that he descends. He is already having this love affair with people whom he loves and they love him. And then he comes to give a glimpse of it to us. So that's why he said that Martya avtarastu ya Martya shikshanam Raksho vadhaya eva na kevalam vibho. That this avatar or this descent or this appearance here in the material world by the Lord is to teach the mortal beings. Martya means mortal, everybody dies here. Although we are immortal, but because we identify with our bodies, then we die. Because we don't die, but we identify with the body which dies, then we think somebody is dead. So therefore he comes to give this knowledge. Two types of knowledge, he said. One is the knowledge of dharma, other is the knowledge of prema. So dharma is to bring a discipline in the society in general, because if there is no discipline, you cannot even teach anything. So first he teaches discipline, that how you can live peacefully. First, there has to be some order. If you go to a classroom, everybody is just jumping and making and thumping on the tables, you can't give a lecture. So first he brings a discipline. That is dharma. As Krishna says, dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says that I come to establish dharma, which means I come to establish discipline. Like you go on the road, so first there has to be some rules, traffic rules. If there is no traffic rule, it will be complete chaos like in India. Right? So that is adharma. And you don't follow. You go to west, traffic is flowing very nicely. So that is dharma. So first you have to establish dharma. But then this dharma, what do you do? Okay, traffic is flowing somewhere, you must reach somewhere. So that is prema. That is the next step. So first you establish dharma, and then you explain to people that why are you here on the road, for what purpose? For love. So these are the two things he does. This is what God does. There is nothing else. And then rest is kill this, bless this, do this. Through that he is giving some education. So that's why he says that Martya Avtarastu ya Martya Shikshana Raksho Vadhayana Kevalam Jabha. Because this killing you can do from far away also. Just send one tsunami, one sandy hurricane, some earthquake, something, so many people will be killed. You don't have to do anything, you don't even need a gun for that. Some natural calamities, anything, people die, too much cold, too much heat. So God is not coming for that he can handle from his own place. So he comes to give education, and ultimate education is education of love, because that is the only thing which is missing here in this world. And that love, again as I said, is not based on physical body. Because if the love is based on physical body, then it is bound to change, because body itself is changing. If your love is based simply on the appearance of somebody, then it will change because the appearance changes. So this love is different. This is what he comes to teach. So that's what he was trying to describe here in this commentary. Although from the verse it is not very clear. Verse is very simple. I can read the translation and you will say, where is all this and this? But it is with this intention that these things are written. And commentaries are unpacking those meanings. And this is all commentary to unpack. These are very deep topics. They look very simple stories because they are put in a attractive way to tell stories. People like to hear stories, but these stories have their deeper philosophical meaning. That why Lord Ramchandra went to forest, why Sita was kidnapped, what was the need to do all these things. So that is to be understood. So I think we will stop here.
What was the verse? What number?
5:19:5. So that's why when he was writing the commentary, he had said this, that Chit Shakti Vritti Bhedena Mahasarena Premakhena. That Lord has his internal potency, which is called Chit Shakti. And this Chit Shakti has a lot of variety in it. And if you churn it, like you have yogurt and you churn it, then the butter comes out of it. So like that, if you churn this Chit Shakti, just an allegorical way of explaining it, then what comes out of that, that is called prema. So now you see why Krishna is stealing butter. See this many times. There is. So stealing butter means prema. That is the significance. Why he has to go to, in his own house there was so much butter. but he's going to the neighbors and stealing it. Because all these people want to have loving relationship with God. So God is going and showing this love. In his house there is plenty of butter because there is plenty of love in the house also. Because the mother Yashoda loves him, Nanda Maharaj loves him, everybody loves him. And then he goes to the neighbor and he steals. And everybody is chastising, why are you doing it? And you are bringing shame to me because these gopis come and complain. They are not really complaining. They want that he come and steal. But if they don't come and complain, there is no fun. Because this is the way to enjoy. So this is the Prem Leela. See the internal thing which is going on. Externally it looks, and people who don't know, this is what these Hindus have a god who is a thief. Yeah, people say like that. And Hindus have no answer for it because they don't understand what is happening. So they keep quiet. Yes. What kind of God we have?
It's hard to say that the Judeo-Christian God comes off much better in the Torah. I think the binding of Isaac right there, or the circumcision of Abraham at age 100, or maybe several years before, for hearing the voice of God. I mean, that's pretty strange stuff too.
Yes.
They also have their interpretations, don't they?
Yes.
They have their interpretation of for instance, the sacrifice of.
They're giving up the ultimate attachment for God, yes.
It's not a question of God coming off badly, it's whether the lessons that come from it are good or not. I would think.
Basically,
God also flooded the whole world and killed everybody except like the people on the ark. You know, in the Christian Judaic story. It's hard to.
Yeah, or the tale of Job. I mean, he tortured the poor guy.
Right.
Thank God Krishna doesn't do that kind of thing.
Right.
He just steals butter. I mean, really. Killing everyone in the world or stealing butter. I'll take the stealing butter guy.
I'll take the dancing with the gopis.
Yes. Yeah, right.
well, he also killed, but he killed his own relatives.
Oh, that's true. And his guru and his
That's true.
teacher.
That's true, but actually they said that it wasn't the same Krishna. That once Krishna stepped outside of Vrindavan and went to Mathura, it was no longer the same Krishna. So, we don't need to take our Goswamis have separated the two Krishnas in such a way that we don't need to have both of them at the same time.
Agreed?
We can just have the one.
Yeah, if you remember, you were there in my classes down, right?
Mm.
I explained that when this Akrura is taking Krishna to Mathura, when Kamsa was calling, and then Akrura is taking bath in the river. So if you remember, I told you, although in the story they didn't say it, but actually the significance was that when he goes inside to take bath, the Krishna who was here, he becomes hidden, and the Krishna who is in Mathura, he comes and sits there. So there are two sides of this. So now that Krishna mood appears, which is more majestic.
Right.
The royal Krishna appears, and the cowherd Krishna, he remains behind but hidden.
Mm.
So in a way, when Krishna says, "Don't worry, I will be always with you," or "I will come back," that's what also he meant. Because he didn't go. So how could he go when there are people who love him so much here? It's impossible for him to leave. Even God cannot leave. So there is a famous statement, Vrindavan parityajya padamekam nagachati, that Krishna never goes out of Vrindavan even one step. He doesn't dare to do that.
Martin Buber said the Messiah only comes when he's no longer needed.
What is it?
Messiah only comes when no longer needed.
Who does that mean?
it's I don't have an answer to what it means, other than that it's an idea of that there has to be some sort of change in humanity.
Which means when people are in love, then Messiah will come. In the sense, because he's not really needed now. Because he likes love only. So then he will appear. That's what it means.
It's nice how everybody in Vrindavan is discussing prem. I just saw Sadhu Maharaj and we talked about prem, and now I come here and we're talking about prem.
Very good. Where's Krishna staying in Vrindavan?
There is Krishna staying in Vrindavan.
Right over there.
Is he in the apartment? One of the apartments?
Wherever his devotees are. Yatra gayanti mat bhakta tatra tisthami nanada. Says that I am not in Vaikuntha, I am not with the yogis. Wherever my devotees are talking about me, that's where I am. In Bhagavatam he says that as soon as you want to hear this Bhagavatam, Krishna comes and sits in your heart. Srimad Bhagavatam. Mahamuni kritai kim vam parayishvara sadhya hridya vrudhyati atra kritivi sushroshu bhista lakshana. When you desire to hear this, then he is sitting there. But he also likes to hear this. Okay, Hare Krishna.
And you, sir?
Dharma Shanti. Yes. Vermont, United States. Mirror City.